Welcome to From Pixels to Celluloid, a podcast dedicated to the discussion of video game adaptations.
Well, hello there, ladies, gents, and fellow people, and welcome to another episode of From Pixels to Celluloid, a podcast dedicated to the discussion of video game adaptations. And today I have a question for you. Will Mortal Kombat 2 be another Mortal Kombat Annihilation? Now, I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy or be the bearer of bad news, but I do have some legitimate concerns. Now, I enjoyed the Mortal Kombat reboot from 2021. Now, I acknowledge it has its issues, and I am well aware of several elements that could have been much better. However, there were certain elements that were executed pretty well, especially when it comes to the violence, fatalities, certain fights, the music, and characters like Sub-Zero, Kano, and Scorpion. The film did have a mixed reception, with opinions varying from good to decent to being pretty bad or forgettable. Now, from what I remember reading and watching certain interviews with the director and producer, I could see that there was definitely passion put into the film, and I believe that there was enough decent material in that first film to build off of and create a sequel. After the reboot, we've had to wait for 4 years for any sort of information, and the wait has felt like a bloody eternity. And just like the first film, it's been shrouded in mystery, with only little snippets of information or imagery being shared every once in a while, and then radio silence for months. It's insane. That being said, just around a month ago, we finally got some new interviews and images released via Entertainment Weekly, and we got some big talking points when it came to the photo shared of Johnny Cage, Kitana, Shao Kahn, and obviously getting that big Mortal Kombat 2 poster with Johnny Cage on the front. And the reception has been just as mixed as ever, but for me, it's definitely building up the anticipation for the eventual first trailer. That being said, I can't help but feel some element of concern or dread about how this film will turn out, specifically in relation to Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Now, before people try to attack me, allow me to provide some info. Mortal Kombat Annihilation is an infamous film amongst MK fans and certain sections of the film fandom in general. If you are a film fan in any way, shape or form, chances are you have either seen this film or at least seen clips of this film, so you are pretty much aware of how bad it is, especially when it comes to the dialogue. It was released in 1997 and was the sequel to the original film from 1995 that was directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. And that first film was a surprisingly solid adaptation, considering the compromises and changes that they needed to make to the source material. And considering the way that film ended, a sequel was all but assured. Alas, the sequel that we got was not the film that we was expecting. Annihilation is a damn mess. It's bloated, cheap, and nonsensical. And yet, it is one of the best bad films ever. And while it certainly loses steam towards the end, especially when it comes to the crazy CGI nonsense with the animality fights, it is super hilarious due to the bad dialogue, cheap sets, funny acting, and just the fights that fluctuate in quality from going from bad to just completely abysmal. But this brings me to the point about MK2 and how I've seen some potential early warning signs. Now, this comes down to two very simple factors. Both films have a pretty large cast, and both films will attempt to expand and tell a larger story than the previous one. And right now, I'm just looking at both of these films, I'm just thinking, oh, there are some similarities here. So just allow me to explain both points and then I will continue. Okay, so let's start with point number one. Both films will have a pretty large ensemble, and to me, this is the biggest red flag. From the original Mortal Kombat to Annihilation, the number of characters increased to a ridiculous degree, leading to a lack of screen time for not only the established characters but also the new ones, so most of them couldn't leave a solid impression or felt like fully established individuals. Most were glorified cameos. And now with the Mortal Kombat reboot, they already had more characters in the base film than Mortal Kombat 95 did, and it suffered for not having a properly balanced cast. For all the solid stuff that we got with Sub-Zero and Kano, everybody else got the short end of the stick. Scorpion was great, but he was only at the start and end of the film. Liu Kang, Kung Lao, Sonya, and Jax had their moments, but it wasn't enough to make them feel like fully fleshed out characters. And again, justice for Kung Lao, that guy got straight up disrespected. And even as cool as certain characters were, like Shang Tsung or Raiden, who have much better representation in their video games, they really didn't feel like they got the appropriate screen time or personalities that they needed for the reboot. And then when it comes to Outworld, all of those dudes were just jobbers. They were barely characters, especially when it comes to favorites like Melina and Goro. And then there's stupid Cole, the new character who took up all the good screen time away from everybody else, and they deserve so much more. Cole, I would have given him a pass if he was a character that actually added something to the film, but he was a big nothing. A big nothing. So with that being said, just like Annihilation, we're getting an expanded cast in the Mortal Kombat 2 sequel. And just trying to imagine the amount of screen time that's going to have to be like distributed between all these additional characters. I haven't got the numbers in my head right now, but I'm pretty sure the additional cast members from the Mortal Kombat reboot to this upcoming sequel will add at least about 9 or 10 extra characters, which is just mental. So I think we're floating around the number of at least 20 known characters who will have a part to play in this film. So I'm just concerned. We already have to try and flesh out and make more for the previous cast members of the reboot, but then have to add all these extra people and give them screen time and make them relevant. Yo, dangerous. That's all I'm going to say. And then moving on to point number 2, both films are attempting to expand and tell a larger story. Again, going from Mortal Kombat 95 to Annihilation, it was a pretty big jump, and you could see the vision that the filmmakers had for the film. I just think they overextended themselves. Annihilation added a bunch of new characters, locations, and tried to emulate the plot and lore elements from Mortal Kombat 3. The end result was a story that felt cluttered, unfocused, and due to a poor script and direction, it couldn't be salvaged. Now, let's look at Mortal Kombat 2 that will be coming out again in October. It's clearly going for a grander story. It will have a tournament that it should have had in the first bloody film, but it will also have the introduction of several characters including Quan Chi, Kitana, Sindel, and Shao Kahn, pivotal characters to the mythology and storytelling. There's also a lot of potential ground to cover when it comes to new realms, death, and resurrections, the backstory and fall of Edenia, Shao Kahn's rule, his adoption of Kitana, and his relationship with Sindel, and that's on top of everything that will come with bringing in Johnny Cage, the return of Bi-Han as Noob Saibot, and whatever they decide to do with that stupid guy Cole. It's a lot, and I'm wondering how much of it will be implemented, what will be streamlined or removed, and what new stuff that they will implement in there as well. Now, with all that being said, Mortal Kombat 2 has several advantages over Annihilation, such as 1. Hindsight. Annihilation was released at a time when adaptations were just crawling out of the mud, and with Mortal Kombat 95 being the only successful film so far, the studio jumped on an opportunity to make a sequel. The filmmakers were ambitious but had limited games to borrow from, and under more capable hands they possibly could have made a good sequel. However, that didn't happen. Annihilation is a textbook example of how not to do a sequel. Mortal Kombat 2, on the other hand, has a big advantage of being made at a time where there is an abundance of video game adaptations. Studios and filmmakers are taking these properties a lot more seriously than they have in the past, and there have been several good to great adaptations that warrant the public's attention, as well as getting fans updated and hyped as well. Now, the Mortal Kombat reboot from 2021 isn't The Last of Us, Arcane, Castlevania, or Fallout, but I did think it did enough to get another chance at a sequel. This film has an opportunity to right several wrongs from the previous entry and make improvements. Just getting some better characterization, some better distribution of the actors all over the place, better character dynamics, and having a better tone that has a solid balance between being serious and also being absurd and silly would be basic requirements that we'd need. On top of that, we just need to have some more consistent and better fights, better cinematography, and possibly just some refinement of the visual effects as well. And also, Mortal Kombat 2 can just look at Annihilation and just say, yeah, I'm not going to do what that film did. Point number 2, Mortal Kombat 2 has more material to draw from. Back then in the late 90s, filmmakers only had a handful of games and comics to work from. When you compare that to now, You have Mortal Kombat in so many different forms, and the upcoming film has so many elements to draw from. I just hope that they really decide to borrow from the cool material that we've seen in the NetherRealm produced games, especially when it comes to Mortal Kombat 9, 10, and 11. And finally, the third point is that they have more consistent filmmaking crew and cast. Now, Annihilation did have some complications in the transition between films, and while some remnants remained when it came to the cinematographer who turned into the director, the film's composer, and a few of the cast members, the sequel changed the director's writer and changed a chunk of the cast. Mortal Kombat 2 has the advantage of having the same director cast, and so there will be a greater sense of continuity and consistency that will hopefully shine through when it comes to the performances, direction, and overall tone. So, to conclude, do I think Mortal Kombat 2 will be another Mortal Kombat Annihilation? No. Or at least I hope not. Again, this film has several things going for it, and it also has the history to learn from, not only when it comes to the 1997 sequel, but also its own predecessor as well. If the filmmakers can find the right balance between being true to the source material while forging its own path and improving on what came before, then we'll be in for a good time when October rolls around, but we'll just have to wait and see. I just really hope that the director, producer, and all of those nice little things that they've been saying in the interviews, especially from that EW presentation from March, will come to pass in a way that will satisfy people. But in this day and age, you just don't know until you see it. So now I turn it over to you, ladies and gentlemen. Do you think Mortal Kombat 2 will make the same mistakes as Mortal Kombat Annihilation, or do you think that there is hope for this sequel? Let me know in the comment section below, or just hit us up wherever we can be found. Please subscribe, give us some feedback. We appreciate it, and you'll probably see us around for another episode pretty soon. But until then, this is the Hypersonic 55 saying bye bye.